Interesting perspective. Does this mean that conservatives are regularly good at nonfiction films like documentaries? I personally don't think so, because think about it. Say, for instance, you are trying to make a documentary about sports. Say you're trying to make a documentary about the best NFL quarterbacks of all time, and you might end up mentioning Warren Moon. And then you start to wonder, well, why was Warren Moon not drafted by the NFL in 1978? Why did he go to the Canadian Football League? And then you'll find out that people at the time didn't think that a black person could be a good quarterback. Is that apolitical? I don't think it is. And the reality is that if you're going to make nonfiction content that is accurate, you'll often find that it won't have very much of a conservative lean to it. Not in the modern day far-right MAGA Republican conservative sense. This is a problem for conservatives trying to make nonfiction media because oftentimes what they find data-wise when it becomes comprehensive contradicts their worldview. For instance, most conservative Republicans do not believe in CRT or systemic racism. However, say you're trying to make a documentary about housing or about the justice system, and very quickly you'll find that there are still problems within the justice system towards minorities and women, and you can't ignore that. If you're going to ignore that, well, that does a disservice to the story that you're trying to tell. A large aspect of filmmaking is also the funding, and what you'll find in any type of political spectrum is that being funded by a specific person can limit your ability to speak on issues. And oftentimes what you'll find is that if you're funded by conservatives, well, you're not allowed to say things that are contrary to conservative interests. So for instance, if you are trying to make a documentary on nature, well, it's not very easy to avoid talking about the oil and gas industry and pollution when it comes to nature. It's not very easy to talk about nature without mentioning deforestation or overdevelopment that is crowding into environments. But if you're a conservative filmmaker, you can't use that as an answer. So oftentimes what they do is they point people towards individual effort towards solving an issue as opposed to realizing the systemic issues that are causing it to be exacerbated. This isn't exclusive to conservatives, this is the reality of filmmaking. You have to please the people who are funding your project, and unfortunately, conservatives are more narrow-minded, which often means that you have to cherry-pick data to fit the worldview, you can't depict certain things in negative light, and you also have to often omit certain key details of history, which often means that the story you're telling isn't going to be as truthful or as compelling as a result. This means that conservatives are essentially operating with a handicap, in that they are not able to utilize all the perspectives and tools at their disposal to tell a very compelling story, because that might offend people that are funding their projects, and it might cause them to question their worldview to the point of where they would no longer consider themselves to be conservatives at all.